Welcome to another episode of the EvokeCast. Our goal at Evoke Endurance is to educate mountain athletes by providing free information on physiology and the training theory and methodologies. And for the first time today, we're going to look at the always elusive mental game in sports with one of the world's top sports psychologists, Dr. David Spindler. I say elusive because, as compared to the physical aspects of sport, when it comes to the mental aspects, we don't have the equivalent of heart rate zones, interval, or strength training protocols. Because of this, for most of us, myself included, the psychology of sports exists as something we acknowledge, but really don't have the tools to effectuate change with. So I want to start with a little background on David and how I came to first learn of him and now work alongside him. I first became aware of David's work when I was watching the movie Mark Cavendish, Never Enough, in which David played a significant role. The movie chronicles the rise and fall and rise again of the world's greatest road cycling sprinter who has won 35 Tour de France stages. It's an incredibly inspiring story of triumph and tragedy, and I highly recommend it. You can find it on Netflix. David was called upon by Cavendish's team to help him overcome some demons, which David did, and Cavendish went on to break Eddie Merckx's record of 34 stage wins in the Tour de France. This record of Eddie Merckx has stood since 1975. Last year, I happened upon a Rich Roll podcast with David, which I found fascinating. Never in my wildest dreams would I have expected to cross paths with David. So you can imagine my surprise and feeling of quite good fortune last spring when he was brought on as the third member of the team supporting an elite ultra runner. I have the role of coach alongside David and the performance scientist Joseph Mastrellet, who I probably will have on as a podcast guest soon. Now, I have absolutely no expertise in the subject of sports psychology, but I do know from all my years coaching that the mental side of endurance sports is every bit as important as the physical side, and in many ways they are intertwined. While David spends most of his time working with elite athletes in the worlds of Formula One, cycling, and triathlon, I hope to extract some actionable takeaways for amateurs. Well, welcome, David. It's a real honor to have you sit down with me for this discussion. I know you are extremely busy bouncing between Tour de France teams and in Spain and Formula One teams. So I really appreciate that you're taking this time to sit down with me. It's a real honor. I really think it's going to be very interesting for the audience.
The pleasure is all mine, Scott. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, so for people who don't know you, can you give us a little bit of your backstory? How did you end up in this place? And, how did you manage to gain, I mean, obviously you're very successful at this. So, and how did you become so successful?
That's a really interesting question. And I don't know if I can actually answer that, to be honest, Scott. I did an undergraduate psychology degree, I was an ex-golfer, and sort of went across to college and played golf and did an undergraduate neuroscience and psychology degree, and then caddied on the PGA Tour for a little while, and then did a master's degree and a PhD while I was doing that, and then had a few mental health issues myself at the time, and went back to Australia where I am at the moment, and with the help of my wife, we started a business that looks after elite athletes, the psychology and the neuroscience of elite athletes. And it started out in cycling. What a really close friend of mine, a guy named Bradley McGee at the time, was a Tour de France rider, which meant that I had access to the majority of his friends. So slowly, over the space of a 20-year career, I became an overnight sensation. There's some people, probably the sensation is the wrong word for it, but an overnight success story. It's a 20 year in the making of being awake at all hours of the day and and working with athletes regardless of timeframes. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so that resonates with me because that's kind of how my career has been. It's been a
Yeah.
slow process, and you incrementally gain a reputation. It doesn't
Yeah.
like you said, it's not an overnight sensation. It's really,
No.
a lot of work in the trenches to get to certainly to where you are today.
Yeah. Also, I don't think a sensation is actually what I am. I'm just me. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yes, exactly. I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that
Yeah.
feeling. Um, Yeah, I think that's something. And I heard you talk about this in the Mark Cavendish movie that, you know, when we look at from the outside at elite athletes, we often put them on a pedestal as some
Yeah.
sort of superhuman. But in fact, they've got feet of clay just like the rest of us and have a lot of the same kinds of problems, plus some different problems.
Mhm.
And it seems like that's an area that, like learning to cope with that must be really important. Um, and and I think learning to cope for the athlete that you aren't that special. You're really good at
No.
this one thing.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like
you're
doing a
not.
PhD in something, isn't it?
Yes. Hmm. Yeah.
Like you're very good at a really, really small specific portion of the world.
Yes.
You may be the best in the world at it, but really, when it comes to the majority of the world, they have no interest in you whatsoever. So
Yes.
you're just good at something, and that's great. And that's not what not what we're talking about here. But like in all honesty, all everyone is doing is trying to be their best at something. It doesn't matter if it's office work or an accountancy firm or a business or in business, or if you're trying to win UTMB. Exactly the
Yeah.
same thing. So how can I
Sure.
be the best version of me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, and one of the things that can get in the way of that, as you said on that Rich Roll podcast, which totally resonated with me, was it can be difficult when you've been told you are special since the age of 12,
Yep.
which many of these top athletes have had a lifetime of they could do no wrong. And that can make them
Yeah.
very difficult to work with. I've had that experience where, they think that they're
Doesn't
special.
stink. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The proverbial doesn't stink. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a very they're very elite athletics at a world class level, a very sheltered life.
Mhm.
In a lot of aspects of it. However, it's a sheltered life lived in the spotlight. So it's a difficult place to be without, and there's some people that do it really well and don't need guidance or help, but the bubble that they have around them is always, it's really is a strong bond. So whether that be their parents or a manager or their personal or their trainer or whatever it is, strength and conditioning coach, that the the team that the individual has around them, regardless of if they're in a team or not, those people are super important in elite athletics. But also, you know, I advocate for that in everyday life at the same time too. Like I have a brother that I'd really liked for that to have occurred too. And I have a really strong emotional bond with a heap of people that he can just sit down and just talk about life with. It doesn't happen very much. As you get older, it doesn't happen. It becomes less and less and less. It's needed more
Yeah.
and more. But yeah,
And that exposes some vulnerability. But if it's
totally.
with people you trust,
Yep.
then it can be a
The
very
vulnerability doesn't matter, does it?
right. Yeah.
The vulnerability doesn't matter as long as it's people you trust.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, so one of the things that I think I have encountered the most in my 30 or so years of coaching has been athletes' performance anxiety leading into an event. And I'm sure this is something is kind of at the center of a lot of the work you do. It seems to be almost ubiquitous in sports, and I'm sure, it's a bit ubiquitous in life in many ways for people who are high achievers, at least. Um, and I've seen it come about often because people put too much pressure on themselves. They set unrealistic expectations. And often that can have quite a negative impact. And at the same time, I've also seen some incredible performances put up by athletes who didn't really care. They were like, oh, maybe, I don't know if this is going to be a good race or a bad race. They're very relaxed about it. They had no expectations. So could you talk to us a little bit about that? I mean, am I onto something there? Do you agree with
Absolutely.
that, or?
Yeah, but also because it's a spectrum. Yeah. So any anxiety or any emotional controls, you're always on the spectrum. And the high performance and where that person sits on that spectrum and where that overall high performance is varies so far individually, it's not funny.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some people that can do really well if they don't have any outcome expectancy whatsoever. But there's others that if they don't have any outcome expectancy, that changes the way they have any interest in racing or any interest in doing an activity.
Mm-hmm.
They need to have some type of outcome attached to whatever they're doing. So that overall overarching goal portion. And so again, that's a spectrum piece. And a lot of my work is how each individual athlete, what is their optimal performance? What is the psychology of their optimal performance? That could be a 12-year-old child. It could be them when they're 12 and they just didn't care about what the outcome was, or laughing and joking with friends, or others. It can be they actually need some hyper focus specific to them at a time for at certain time frames. And but sometimes that performance anxiety piece, it's only an issue when it becomes crippling and it becomes a detriment to overall performance. Yeah, because what they're doing is putting emotion and attaching that to an outcome, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once that emotion is overriding what that outcome, or they don't, and that a belief system changes as a result of that, then the anxiety comes, because it's the what ifs. What if I can't do this? What if what if this? What if that? And most of the time those what ifs that are in their brain, or their vortex in themselves spiraling downwards, will never occur, and it becomes a detriment. But other times, other people can just go, all of these what ifs are steadying and readying me to be able to change tax if I need it. Mm-hmm. As well.
Yeah.
So, but again, there's massive individual differences when it comes down to overall performance. So when it comes to the anxiety portion, if there is a performance decrement, then we go, okay, well, what's making that happen? Tell me the reasons, or give me the reasons why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, because the majority of the time it actually has nothing to do with the performance itself. There's external factors that are making it happen.
Yeah, trying to please your
anybody,
friends or your sponsors or yourself, or
could be anyone. Yeah. So what is it? So it's not the outcome or the race itself that you're concerned about. It's attaching that race to something that's not needed to be attached to.
This brings up the subject for me of process versus outcome goals.
Yes.
And I mean, in my coaching career, especially when I used to coach a lot of young athletes, I've just focused on process goals because I didn't want them to have these unrealistic or expectations, or be putting a lot of stress on themselves to perform for their parents or whatever. And so we would set process goals. So like, okay, these are some things you're going to do during this race, that have nothing to do with the outcome of the race. And if you do those, you will have been successful, and maybe you'll have a great race. But it sounds like what you're just saying now is that maybe that was not the best approach, because some people actually need that
they need
pressure
to go, like, you're doing this to win. Okay, are you? Yes. Is that what you want to do? Say, so we work with one specific athlete together, and I'm not sure if that's so. I'm going to leave that there. And that person needs an outcome specifically to be able to give him or her the whatever it is that they and that that allows him a continuum of how long I need to do something. It gives him a duration of a task duration of that. If I'm going to do that, like I have no interest in doing sport if I don't have an outcome attached to whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have there's another athlete that I work with that if we did that, that would cripple her, absolutely destroy her. So you need the process goals in that behalf. But with the athlete that we work with, he needs that outcome goal. But then what we need to do as his performance bubble is to fill in those process pieces.
Right.
In general, he needs help with that sort of stuff because all he's concerned about is that outcome, and that outcome's all that actually matters to him, and that's fine. That is absolutely fine because that's what drives him. That's the driven nature and the reason why world class is world class. His world class is world class.
Yes.
It's the driven nature of that. So it's actually about working out what their high performance mentality actually looks like, and tapping into that. And also, there's a fine line between what we're tweaking here as well when it comes to that. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because
it does.
we can over tweak the outcome, and it'll never occur because we haven't delivered all, we haven't filled in the gaps below that. Where other people need a bottom up processing portion. It's like process. Because if we do this, what you actually really want here is this, but we're not going to talk about that because you struggle with it, and that's okay.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
If you
Where other athletes is purely top down, but as long as the we end up with exactly the same performance piece, it's okay, isn't it?
Yeah. No, that's great. That's really helpful for me as a coach, and I think it'll be helpful for people to how would a person assess what type of personality they had, that that they need to go into the race not caring about the result, or they need to go into the race thinking this is a life or death situation?
I don't think it ever should be life or death.
Well,
sport. So how would you assess it? Is just look back over your career as an athlete, whatever, however long that would be, and think about the mentality that you were in pre-performance when you did your best, when you actually did your best. And was it when you were carefree and 16 and like nothing actually mattered other than just going to play basketball or to I don't know, ride motocross or whatever it is? Or was it, I'm waiting for outdoor nationals in motocross, I want to win outdoor nationals, and if all I want to do is become American champion at this, I want to become a state champion, or that's actually what I want to do, and then you fill in the gaps from the bottom? Or are you somewhere in the middle where you actually need all of the stuff? I need the outcome and the process at exactly the same time. Which one is it? Find your optimal performance zone, or your operating zone where you do really well. And it doesn't have to be in your athletics. It can just be where you've operated in a way that you think is high performance. It doesn't have to be athletics here. We don't have to talk about it. Sure. Like it's even if it's from an academic point of view. If you're doing a university degree, say, when did you study the best? Was it when you just went, okay, I'm just going to sit down and literally just give me an hour of time and just target that? Or is it, I just need bits and pieces and I just need to be in the right headspace to be able to do it? What is your optimal performance? It should be across everything. Just do that mental arithmetic in your head. It's like, how am I going to do this as optimally as possible? Because I don't have all the time in the world, and neither do you. Yeah. Like, what is it? Like, if it's folding clothes, how do I do this the most optimal? You do it without even trying, but like without even thinking about it, because it's kind of what the brain does as a function anyway. But yeah.
So most of the people who end up at least my experience has been almost exclusively with endurance sports. They are very much type A, and I'm sure
Mhm,
most elite athletes are already very much type A, but it
mhm.
seems like there's an elephant in the room when it comes to especially ultra endurance sports, where the type A personality is going to think that more is always going to be better. And that can lead to some terrible results,
Yeah.
injury, overtraining, burnout.
Mhm.
I've seen that in careers, but you need that. You need that drive and motivation. I have a sign in my gym that I've had for years and years, and it's handwritten that I made 25 years ago that says you can't coach desire. And it has to come from the athlete.
You need to
If they
drive.
don't,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, if they don't have that drive, then there's nothing I can do as a coach. But
Mhm.
is there a way that we can protect these uber competitive type A personalities from themselves? Um,
Um, that's an education piece, usually. Um, and once you get to world class sport, like the world class athletes and what they do really well, it's a race for recovery. We've spoken
yeah,
about this in private conversations, but what they do better than anybody else is recover better. They don't necessarily have, like, there could be a bricklayer or a lawyer that may have the same physiology that hasn't had the opportunity to be able to be whatever that person is. Yeah. However, they've got they've got the rest of their day to recover.
yeah.
That doesn't happen in normal life. Like I cannot, like I'd love to go to do a 2 hour run in the forest and then come home and have my recovery shake and put my Normatec boots or boots on, recovery boots on, and sit down and watch some Netflix. But that's a part of their work.
Yes.
That is
Yeah.
work. That is more work than actually doing the intensive, endurance exercise that they're doing. But if you're a mother or a father, or you have um, a university degree that you're doing, or whatever job that it is, or you don't have that luxury.
Right.
So there needs to be some type of outcome expectancy change as a result of that as well. I think. As so most people, when they burn out, is because they aren't recovering well enough to be able to, and whatever that is, it may be nutrition, it could be time frame, it could be lots of different things. It could be high stress, high cortisol, could be lots of different allostatic things, which is all of the external pressures other than the performance pressure, um, that are making that happen. And that's the difference between professional athletes and at the risk of putting them down, and I'm not trying to here, age group athletes that actually still
Mhm.
work and then actually need to earn a living external to their athletic.
Yeah.
There has to be something has to give. It has to.
Right. No, we used to call it eat, sleep, train. That was the
Yeah.
life of the professional. It's a
Yep.
little bit like being
It's
a
Groundhog
monk.
Day. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're not training, you're on your back resting or eating,
Yep.
just so you can get back out there and train some more.
Yeah.
And it is a luxury. I think in my experience, it has a lot of appeal to people, many of whom, if they had to live that way, would hate it
Oh,
because it's
but they
so.
they hate it. Elite athletes hate it
Mhm.
because it's Groundhog Day,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. It's
That
sort of it's
that's the part of
so
us. Yep. Yeah. Sorry. Go.
it's so mono focused that
Yep.
there's just this one thing that's sort of overshadows everything else in your life. Whereas a person who, yes, they do a triathlon or they run the occasional mountain race, but they've got friends and family and they travel and they have a job and they have a real social network. And
Yep.
often I've just seen athletes who are, they come home, they crawl into bed after a workout and resting until
Yep.
the afternoon. They go out and do it again.
You
And
go out again.
it's pretty damn boring.
Yeah, and it's monotonous, and
Yeah.
you get a lot of You know, a lot of the conversations that we have is I've lost motivation.
Yeah,
I don't want to do this anymore, or whatever it is. And
sure.
I really dislike the word motivation, because you can be motivated to eat a candy bar. Like it's actually a word that doesn't really mean too much, really.
Ah,
They've lost their joy for whatever it is they're doing. It's actually what
yeah.
they've lost, because they haven't lost their will to win, which is what high performance athletes are mostly about. That hasn't been lost. But what is it external to that piece that's not making them love their sport enough anymore to be able to deliver?
So
So the
the
motivation piece,
joy,
yeah, that's
the
so attached to what they think is motivation, right?
right. That makes
Yeah,
a lot of sense. Yeah.
yeah. So it's not, they haven't lost their motivation, because if they've lost motivation, they would have retired.
Yes. But they've lost the joy.
But there, they've lost the fun, and they've lost their innocence, there's
Hmm.
lots of words for it. But so what is it about it at the moment that you find that is so difficult, that makes you want to stop doing the one thing that you've always wanted to do? What is
Yeah.
it? That's not losing motivation, is it? There's something else you've lost your
Mhm.
drive. What is that? Why?
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that came out in the Mark Cavendish movie is you helping him or him rediscovering, and you're being on the sidelines assisting him rediscovering that childlike joy of just riding his bicycle.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Just like the love. Like he actually, because we sat down, and like before that movie, that the time frame before that movie, we sat down, and like his joy and love in describing what riding his bike was, and what it actually, because it's like anything. It's like ultra trails, right? That's freedom, isn't it? So the athlete that we work with, going running in the bush, it's an individual thing, and it's just a freedom thing, and it's just you and nature, and you can go whichever way you want, do whatever you want to do, and it removes you from all of the things that you are finding discomfort from when you're a child. Yeah? That's why people get into endurance sports, because they kind of want to be by themselves a little bit, and just want to,
yeah.
take some
Yeah.
time. Yeah. So
Hmm.
if you lose that, then that's all we have to do, really. That's your motive. You haven't lost motivation. Let's go and find that fun. Let's go and find the joy that you've had and you still have, because when you talk to me about that time, it's still there. It's still there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, what is it that's making that not happen anymore? And I can guarantee you, it's not the sport.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Maybe it's
something
those
else.
Alice,
Yeah,
maybe it's that
yeah,
pressure from the outside or these
yeah,
expectations.
yeah.
Um,
It's not
huh.
the actual sport, because doing the sport, if you go out and do it, like once they're out doing it, they're fine every
Mhm.
single time. It's like, I don't want to go out the door. I don't want to do this or whatever. I'm finding it so hard to get dressed and actually just get out the door. But then when they're out the door and you have a conversation with them 20 minutes once they're finished, then the endorphins are there, and I had so much time. Like I saw this cow that I hadn't seen in 10 years, or there
Mhm.
was a hut along the trail that I'd never noticed before, or whatever it is. They have joy.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
that's not what it is it? It's something else. So let's find that,
Yeah.
and
That's
go from
very
there.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Helping a person. I mean, it was so clear. I think that was one of the most um, important moments in that film was when you and Mark rode up to that, I guess, BMX track or whatever it was
Yeah.
where he raced as a child. And, then you could just see he lit up like,
Yep.
it really,
Yeah.
you could just see the joy. And
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
like that must have been kind of a watershed moment. Um,
Oh, for me too. I've got goosebumps now thinking about it. Like, it's honestly one of the highlights of my career, is seeing the athlete. It's few times that I've ever seen an athlete's light bulb turn back on again.
mhm.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
And I've been in that specific place standing beside somebody when that light bulb goes off, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
He's now, a knight of the realm. He's now Sir Mark Cavendish, and he's won he's the winningest Tour de France stage winner ever. And this person, all of that stuff may not have ever happened if that light bulb never happened,
Sure.
which
Yeah.
is phenomenal. It's like I actually think about that, every second week, and have since that was 2019 March.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really
That's
cool.
it's
Like it's cool to have as a moment in a career, just that. So
oh, you bet.
yeah,
Yeah. That I find, from my experience as a coach that for me, the joy of coaching comes from seeing the athlete's success.
yeah,
And it's an incredible reward. I mean, obviously there's some ego involved because, oh, I did a good
yeah,
job. But at
yeah,
the same time, it's like, most of us, or not, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't think most people have the opportunity to have a pronounced effect, positive effect on other people's lives, especially someone who's not a family member or closely related to you. Um, and that doing what you do and doing what I do, it gives us that opportunity to
yeah.
actually make a difference. I mean, we're not curing cancer, that's for sure, but we are making a difference for a lot of folks. And in our case, my case, and the case of our business, it's primarily amateurs, folks that
Mhm.
have a life and a job and all that. But it's quite rewarding to see people succeed.
Yeah, it's the best, isn't it? And what's even better is that I'm fortunate enough to have a career that's long enough where now I see people at random spots in the world, and they come back to me and just go, "You don't understand what you did here, but
Mhm.
this is what the effect that it's had on me," and I now take that to all of, I take that through lots of other things as well. And I'm quite sure you would have got it as well, Scott. Like, had an athlete that's going,
I,
the discipline that you gave me when I was, 21, I'm now 40, and I still use those principles now. And
right.
it's like it
Yeah.
actually has changed the way that I live my life. It's,
And so I was lucky as a youth to have, and through my, short-lived professional career, um, to have had some extraordinarily good, a handful of very, very good coaches, a bunch of pretty terrible coaches. Um, and we can talk a little bit about what separates them and makes it different. But the impact, I mean, I still think back to coaches I had at 15 or 16 years old and think, wow, I still carry the lessons from that coach. And now at 70, I
yeah.
can still think about that and wow, what an incredible experience. And of course, at the time, I didn't appreciate it. And I probably was a smart ass kid to the coaches and I wasn't showing my appreciation at all.
But does that shape how you now work with your athletes, the younger athletes, if they are like smart back to you as well?
Um, Well,
Do you
at
thought
first,
about
it's
that?
been about 10 years since I coached a junior team.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was probably not as tolerant as I should have been. Um, I think they would have thought I was kind of a hard ass. Um, but yeah, I think it probably did impact me. I'm not sure if it was positive or negative, though. Um,
It sounds like it's positive though, at
yeah.
least.
Well,
I think.
I had this. I know this is not about me.
Yeah.
I want to hear your thoughts, but I have to relate a story that I think will resonate with folks, and it illustrates this point we're talking about. And that is that the first book I wrote, Training for the New Alpinism, was really just geared towards mountaineers and alpinists. And the book came out, and I thought, well, no one's really going to care. Um, it's such a niche area. Well, we might sell a few hundred copies of this book. Well, we ended up selling 100,000 copies of the book. But what one day I was in the mountains with a friend of mine, and we had just climbed this done a fun climb on a big glaciated peak, and we were walking back down the trail to head back to the car, and we came upon a kind of a place where people bivouac before the climb. We had done it in a day, but most people would do the climb in 2 days. And as we walked through this, there was a campsite there with a guided group of maybe 10 people, 10 clients and their guides who were just setting up their tents. And we were walking through this area, and I must have had, our logo t-shirt on. That's all I can think of. But this guy called out from, 30 meters away and said, "Hey, are you Scott Johnston?" And I was sort of taken aback, like, yeah, what did I do now? What did I do? And he came running over and he said, "I just want to tell you that, was it a year ago, I weighed 300 pounds, and last week I climbed Mount Rainier. And this has made such a big difference in my life." And I was blown away. I mean, first of all, I was,
That's
very
touching. That's amazing.
it was really touching. I mean, I think that meant more to me than, I've coached athletes that have been on podiums at World Championship.
Yeah.
And this, I think, was more, yeah, it really was an incredible experience. So I can appreciate what you're saying about that,
Yeah.
having this
Yes.
impact. And this is a
Yeah,
total
exactly.
stranger, complete
Yeah.
stranger.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
yeah. So that's the reason why I do what I do, in all honesty,
mhm.
is
Sure.
actually because I know that I have a skill set, and at some stage, because I've had mental health struggles when I was a lot younger, and still go through them now, to be fair, but that I don't want people to not have support when they need support. And if you can just help one person, and I know that I have as well, which means that I classify myself as a success. But it's the little things, the things that you don't know, that then 20 years time come back and just go, yeah, I've done okay here. My life is fulfilled because I've helped others. So
Well, I think if
I'm
you're
not
going
as
to be
selfish as what I think I am, at least anyway.
yes. Yeah. And I think that, that's one of the key components of being a good coach. And I'm going to call you
I
a
agree.
coach. You fit into that category.
Yeah.
Um, is empathy.
Yep.
And I mean, the technical skills can be learned and trained and taught. I
Yeah.
mean, that's, kind of nuts and bolts stuff. But if you don't have the empathy for the athlete,
Mm.
you're, yeah, I think you're in the wrong business. And
Yep.
unfortunately, I have seen a lot of coaches who they knew the technical things, in some
Mhm.
cases not so well, but in most cases they knew the technical stuff, they knew the nuts and bolts, but had like no empathy for the athletes and struggles they were having and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So that's the difference I know. It's the difference between a trainer and a coach. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a trainer that just sits there and just looks at numbers and just do this and be a robot, there's some people that want that and need that. If you want a trainer, go and get a trainer. And there's people out there that are okay at that, and they're quite good, and they have PhDs in whatever that is that you need.
Yeah.
But if you actually want somebody to interact with and to help you be the best version of whatever sport that you want to do, go and grab a coach every day of the week. Every day of the week. Because that is the difference. The difference is a coach actually cares for the athlete, where a trainer doesn't care about an athlete at all, just cares about the numbers, cares about the improvement of whatever it is. Sorry, a trainer does that, not a coach. But yeah. So from my side, what makes a good coach 100% is the interaction between
Mm-hmm.
the athlete and the coach, whatever that looks like. Yeah. And if it's a positive impact on that, on both sides, that's when the environment works the best.
Yes, I mean it's a team. It's really a
Yeah.
team, and
Mhm.
it's a rather intimate relationship that you're
Yeah. Of
establishing.
course. Yes.
One that
Absolutely.
has to be based on trust
Mhm.
and openness and good communication. I mean, one of the things that I have tried to impart to all the coaches that I've trained that work for me at Evoke is to to communicate. The more you can communicate with the athlete, the better that bond, that relationship is going to
Yeah.
be cemented.
Yeah.
And I discovered this because when I was coaching cross-country skiers at the World Cup level, I was living with them 24/7.
Yeah.
We were on the road or at training camps or races or traveling. And you really do begin to establish a relationship that way. And I realized that that was what made coaching, my coaching, as successful as it was the fact that, yes, I've got this empathy, but also it was just I want to know how the athlete is responding to the training or other
Yeah.
personal problems in their life. And so I think that this is something that I've experienced. Well, now we coach almost exclusively remotely. So, through the internet on Training Peaks.
Mhm.
And it works well because we can see the hard data from the athlete,
Mhm.
but we also are pulling out of them their subjective feelings about
Yeah.
how things are going. And I think that's something that you're if you don't get that, you're not getting coaching.
No, no,
Yeah.
you're being trained.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Yeah. You actually,
Yeah.
so um yeah, so the subjective nature and like with the athlete that we work together with, we have a group of people that are vulnerable enough to say, no, I actually did this wrong. I made a mistake here, and it's okay. I'm willing to accept the fact that my expertise was this, and I made a mistake. But here's how we as a team can move forward and be better at it. And no one blames it. There's no blame game. There's no anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're what I think the best practitioners in the world do is have that vulnerability and acceptance at the same time, because you're human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like people are human, and um, my work in sort of MotoGP and Formula One and Superbikes, when I work with the team type of thing with this, is that no one individual makes a mistake. You make a mistake as a team, right? Because you if a person, say, I don't know, like a wheel operator, a tire operator in Formula One messes up a tire change, right? So what is it about that made him stressed enough that made that occur? So what did the team do wrong in the how can we change our actions in the lead up to that to calm that person down enough to make the mistake? He clearly is good enough to do his job. So it's not his fault that he's made an error, because humans make errors.
Yeah.
So is there something that we can do that makes the percentage chance of that not happening again? That's
Yeah.
all you really need to, it's what you need to be concerned about, not pointing fingers and go, you made a mistake, you cost me this, we cost this. No, absolutely not. No. That's the cost of doing business, and the cost of athletics is that we're human and humans make mistakes. So as a
And
team, how do we move forward and then be better and make the percentage chance of that happening again less? Simple.
I often
Yeah.
have said it jokingly, especially after these two books came out and were very successful, is actually the book I should write is all the mistakes I have made in my coaching
Yes.
career. I mean, it would be another
Yeah.
400-page book, but
Yeah.
like, don't do it
Yeah.
this way. I found out the
Yeah.
hard way that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
that's really, I think in all areas of life, that's how we grow is we make mistakes, we learn from those mistakes and
Mhm.
hopefully not repeat them over and over
Yeah.
again. Because I think that, and then again, that's, I believe the difference. I mean, you can't do that as a trainer. You can only do
No,
that if you're in a
you can
position
only
as
do
a
that as a
coach.
coach. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can only do that as a coach, because as a trainer, that doesn't bother you at all,
Hmm.
because you can make that up in the numbers.
And, one of I really would like to see more of him, but when Mark Cavendish moved to his final team and he had that I think it was the new coach, who I think
Vasi,
was
Vasilis
is he Greek?
Anastopoulos. Yeah, he
Greek,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he
yeah.
seems like a fascinating guy. I mean, I loved the comments he made. Sounds like you know, Mark would hate him on some days and love him on other days, and but he seemed like this like my kind of coach, that's for sure.
Very much so. So Vasilis is now the head of performance at a team called Astana. Um,
Mm,
and it was actually, it's Mark's last coach as well. And so when he won the last Tour de France stage, Vasi was his coach.
uh,
So we spent three weeks in Athens pre Tour de France last year.
mm,
Was just the three of us, and I was on the back of a scooter for 5, 6, 7 hours a day with Vasi, and we sort of worked as a team to put Mark into a spot where he believed enough in himself um, that he could win another stage, or one more stage, and then, but yeah, so um, he's one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, Vasi. Um,
mhm.
and also one of the best coaches in the world, endurance cycling coaches, for that very reason that we're talking about before. It's empathy, it's vulnerability, it's having adequate knowledge of the physiology and also the psychology of the athletes that he works with. So
Yeah.
he's phenomenal at his job, but also the phenomenal human at the same time. So I've got more time than yeah, I could talk about him for hours. Yeah, he's the best.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, they could make a movie about him, I think, and which
they
has some
should.
great
They should.
stories.
They
Yeah.
should. Yeah.
Um, well, I want to be respectful of your time, and what time is it in Australia at the moment?
Oh, I don't know. Let's have a look. 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, so thank you
Yeah.
for getting up so early for me.
So
Um,
that's what I'm here.
so the compulsion to train
Mhm.
often seems to go hand in hand with endurance sports, where people are they're not training because they have that love anymore, that joy, or maybe they never had it. Maybe they're compulsive about training because of a I don't know, obsessive compulsive disorder,
Yep.
or
Mhm.
they're fixated on losing weight or whatever. And those seem to me to be, I mean, compulsivity in training seems to be a mistake and a wrong thing. Would
Yes.
you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely I do. Um, Usually if you can get to the bottom of what the compulsivity is in the first place, it's not easy. And obviously that's on a spectrum as well. But at an amateur level, and I don't do, I've got to admit, my practice is not. I don't deal with amateur level, and I haven't for a very, very long time. Um, so I see that compulsivity when it comes to elite level, mostly in nutrition, in all honesty,
Mm.
and their level
Hmm.
and their and because that's what they can control. They're looking for control when it comes to that piece, especially in elite athletics, because it's one of the only things that they're controlling their intake of something, because everything else usually is spinning out of control, or the perception of that is that. Yeah. So that nutrition phase, when it comes to that, that's where the compulsivity comes in. I see that a lot, but in the non-elite world, or the amateur world, um, where amateurs can be elites too. So probably shouldn't make that distinction. But um, in the amateur world, where that compulsion can be from a lot of other different things that are going on in their life in the first place. But what are they trying to control? What are they trying to run away from, or are they trying to control? That usually where
Yeah.
that compulsion comes in. But yeah.
Changing subjects, I got a
Mhm.
couple last things I want to talk to you about. First is selfishness,
Mhm.
because and I certainly know very well at the professional or elite level, these people are often quite selfish, and that can manifest itself in really unpleasant, ugly ways, but it can also, I mean, we know it's a powerful motive. I mean, not a motivator. It is what's also helping them with that drive. It's keeping them out, getting out the door every day. It's making them have a prioritizing their training at the expense, in many cases, of personal life.
Yep.
Is there a way to handle athlete? You've had, I'm sure, to deal with quite a few selfish athletes, probably on a daily basis. And how do you deal with that?
Well, it manifests itself very differently with different people as well. You have to, from a world-class point of view, I've yet to see a world-class athlete that isn't selfish, because they have to be. There's no, that it is like, it is, because world-class athletics is an inherently unhealthy thing. It's got nothing to do with health. To be the world's best at any athletic pursuit is actually not about health. It's about performance. And performance in general, a lot of the time, is actually quite an unhealthy pursuit. And our job as the performance staff around them is to provide as much healthy input to make that unhealthy pursuit as healthy as possible. It's the opposite of what the amateurs the pursuits are. They're doing it, the majority of those are doing it for a health-based reason. Where in elite sport, what we're trying to do is take them to a line where the optimal performance is actually not about health. They're actually breaking down.
Yes.
But in overall performance, they're getting unhealthier the more that they do it. When it comes to performance, if you look at UTMB, there's no way in the world our athlete is more healthy in the last kilometre than the first kilometre.
That's just, for sure.
It's just not, that's, so what we try and do is keep that health as high as possible for as long as possible to get the optimal performance out of it. Because again, it's about minimizing the number on the left-hand side of their name when the result sheets come out, because that's all they care about.
Yeah.
Whether that's 1X person, 2X person, 3, whatever it is. So that number on the left-hand side is actually super important in elite sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where it's the health portion is really what you need to be selfish about. And being selfish is not entirely necessarily a negative thing, like you said. You can be selfish because it gains a net positive overall as well. When it comes to an amateur level, like, be selfish, take some time for you, take that hour a day or 45 minutes or 15 or however long you've got to actually just take some time for you and deliver whatever it is that you need to do. Because that is inherently a selfish thing. If you've still got laundry to do, or you need to do the books, or you need the gardening, or the lawn needs mowing, or whatever, you've got a myriad of different things that you need to do. But without that 45 minutes or 20 minutes or however long you've got, you need to be selfish. It's an inherently good thing. It's when it becomes overriding again, and when it becomes an overarching theme in everything, it's removing yourself from actual needs when it becomes unhealthy, and that's when you need to change, or at least need to pull yourself up. And
then people don't want to be around you when you're like that.
No, you become alone really quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
well, my last question for you, and I don't know if you know about this or not, and so feel free to, and we can edit this out if we need to. What do you think of Tim Noakes' central governor theory? Are you familiar with it?
I do, yes. It's problematic is one. It's very, I like homeostasis and going back in and out back into homeostasis, and your ability to go in like above and below that space and trying to get yourself into that spot. With new science, it kind of has removed itself a little bit with how I think if they did the same theory now, it probably wouldn't work as what because the science back then actually delivered really well. But now we know a little bit more, which means that central governor theory, because we know more about the body and how it works, doesn't work as well. Does that make sense? But
Yes, it does.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think you could tweak if you tweak that theory a little bit more, and if someone is willing to sit down and just go, um, you actually have a capacity and you work best at whatever level it is. That still absolutely is kind of what the body does. It wants to go back to whatever it is, I think.
But so it seems like um, I've heard you say uh, that let's say someone is running in a race to exhaustion and
Yep,
they stop because they become exhausted.
yep,
And yet you have said, and we know this to be true, if they
yep.
wait 10 seconds, they can
They
start
go.
again.
Yes,
So something made them slow down and stop. And yes, I'm certain there was certainly, there's a lot of afferent feedback
yes.
mechanisms that would be sending off alarm bells in your brain. But doesn't it make sense to you that the more you're exposed to that, the better your body gets, and your better your brain gets to accepting, like, oh, I'm not, this isn't a 3 alarm fire. I'm actually going to be okay. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Because that's the way
Um,
I've thought of the central governor theory is,
so kind of yes. So the new neuroscience behind that, there is chemicals in the brain that actually make that occur. Dopamine and serotonin are some mediators of acetylcholine, and so it makes. So maybe I've explained it wrong. It makes the you get better at that from a that is true, but that's only because of the way that the neuroscience and the chemicals are getting delivered and where it's getting delivered by. It's coming from a schema, not coming from a central governor as such, which could be which is pretty much the amygdala. So, but yeah, like in theory, it works really well.
Mhm.
If that makes sense. And it's a brilliant theory. Don't get me wrong, it's not what I'm trying to, yeah, but there's definite aspects of it that have been argued against and successfully. One of those being a guy named Samuel Macora. He's out
Yeah.
of the University of Bologna. I think he's still there, but he does a lot of stuff on cognitive fatigue and endurance and cognitive fatigue. And he did some things when there was no stimulus that sort of like running when there's no external feedback at all, which made the central governor should make the central governor switch off at exactly the same time all the time, and it didn't, and it didn't.
Mm.
So there's lots of different, yeah. So everyone's trying to fight each other when it comes to overall theories,
Yeah.
but there's certain aspects of all of them that are correct.
Yeah. I
It's
think
kind of
for me,
yeah,
when I read that, and it must have been 25 years ago when when his book first came out,
yep,
I thought this makes sense to me because no matter the form of fatigue, whether it's, glycogen depletion or lactate accumulation, you name it, the response of the body is exactly the same. The brain
yep,
starts sending lower, less potent signals to the muscles so that you slow down.
yep,
And I thought,
yep,
okay, so the brain is in effect, this central control for this.
mhm,
So that yes, obviously you're going to have, if lactate accumulates, or I should say, the acidity goes up in a muscle, that's going to impair that muscle's function. But
yep,
there is an afferent signal to the brain like, hey, there's something bad going on
Yeah,
down
yeah,
here. You
yep,
know, can you do something about it? And the
yep,
brain's response is, okay, we better slow down. And so
yep.
it made sense to me at the time, but I mean, I'm no
But
exercise scientist or psychologist.
it still makes sense now.
Hmm.
It really still does make sense now. Like the majority of it does make sense. However, there's other aspects of it. There's more nuance to it because science has evolved.
Yeah.
Than that theory can overall explain. And so one of the guys that's on that paper is a guy named Jeroen Swart, who's now the head of performance at UAE Team Emirates
Mm.
cycling team, and really really good scientist, lovely man. But we've had a couple of conversations actually about this in a team bus in the Alps of France once. But yeah, there's a lot of I actually like it as a theory.
Hmm.
There's more nuance to it now that we know more science. Is
Sure, that
probably
makes
the was
sense. Yeah.
probably the
I
yeah
mean, it's handy at a certain level, maybe at a somewhat superficial level. It
yeah.
it was at
It's an
least it was
understanding, isn't
handy.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a
it's an
handy way
understanding.
for me to gain some understanding,
Yeah,
even if it's not completely scientifically rigorous.
but the thing is, it probably was then. It was the most effective theory that we had for an endurance activity at the
Mhm.
time. That's the way science works, isn't it? That's the best part about it, is because you think that you know things, then all of a sudden it comes out that we weren't quite right.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
did, which is now the high carb, how much carbohydrates that we're
Yeah.
using now, or how we use peripheral vision at night more than what we think that we do. All lots of, and then how the frontal lobe can be engaged a little bit better to be able to improve endurance performance. How you can
Yeah.
use dopamine and serotonin and all of the things that we do when it comes to our athlete that we've been doing when it comes to their performance. That we didn't know all of that stuff 20 years ago.
No, no, not at
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
It's what makes this life exciting, interesting, learning
yeah,
new
I
things
agree.
all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I
Um,
have a lot of fun with it. Yeah, because I'm wrong a lot and I enjoy that. Yeah,
enjoy yeah, finding out what you don't know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I really
Yeah.
enjoy being wrong, and there's not many. I don't see many non-scientists that actually are like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. So because you, as a scientist, you can actually have your entire career doing a theory or something, and it takes two papers to ruin your entire life work.
Yeah. Somebody comes out and yeah.
He comes out with something different, and it's like,
Different. Yeah.
oh, hang on a minute, I didn't. Yeah, it's no longer a thing. I've
Yeah.
spent millions of dollars and my entire life works this, and you have to be okay with it
Yeah. Well,
because
that's the
it's
way
just
science
knowledge,
is.
isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah. And that's the way science is supposed to work for sure.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. But yes,
well, David, is there anything we've covered a lot of ground here? Is there anything that you feel like you want to say that I haven't asked you about yet?
I don't know actually. Just anyone who's listening to this, just have fun doing what you're doing. Like
Yeah.
exercise and endurance activity. And when it comes to amateur level, if you're not having fun doing it, ask the question why, and then find that joy again.
That's a
Yeah.
great sentiment and a great thought. Thank you very much. Well, thanks, David, for sharing with us and taking the time and getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning or earlier. I really appreciate
I've
it.
been awake the whole time. I've had meetings beforehand, by the way.
Oh,
I've been in,
see,
yeah, but
I thought you were still
yeah,
in Europe, and that
no,
was why I set this time. So, but
it's all good.
anyway, I'm glad we got together. It's a joy talking to you, and I look forward to continuing our professional relationship on the side too. So,
Me
thank you.
too. Yeah, I enjoyed it. So thanks a lot. I don't do these very often, Scott. So but yeah, I'm glad I did this one. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.